King Old Lady Shelter and the 15 Hells Angels. The desert road was long and cruel, the kind of highway that shimmered in the sun and ate at the spirit of anyone foolish enough to walk it alone. But Old Lady Shelter was no fool, and he sure as hell wasn't alone. They called him king now, not because he had a throne, but because he had built one from blood, respect, and the roar of engines. Behind him thundered 15 men, each one patched into the most feared motorcycle brotherhood the West had ever seen, the Hells Angels. The Shelter. The name, Old Lady Shelter, came from his first act of rebellion, back in '73. He wasn't more than 17 then, skinny, sharp-eyed, and dangerous because he had nothing left to lose. His mother had been beaten by a stepfather meaner than rattlesnakes, and Shelter put the man down one night with a tire iron. Didn't kill him, but ruined his face for good. The neighborhood women whispered, "That boy sheltered his old lady," and it stuck. Years later, when the desert wind had carved deep lines into his face and his hands were calloused from chrome and clutch, he wore the name like a crown. The 15 Hells Angels at his back weren't just bikers, they were a warband. Each had earned their patch with blood and silence. Shelter wasn't their president on paper. The club had its hierarchy, its national chapters, its votes, but when the road stretched long and hostile, when knives flashed in bars or rival clubs stalked them in the night, it was Shelter's eyes they looked to. The war brewing. It was the summer of 1985 when the storm came. Meth was flooding the Southwest, and outlaw clubs were making fortunes smuggling for cartels. The Angels had always been kingpins of their own trade, guns, runs, and protection rackets, but they drew the line at bending knee to anyone, cartel or not. Word came down that a rival crew, the Vultures, had cut a deal with a Mexican syndicate. The Vultures weren't much on their own, scavengers, small-time hustlers, but with cartel backing, they had money, firepower, and arrogance. They started leaning on the Angels' bars, shaking down women the Angels protected, torching bikes just to send a message. Shelter knew it was more than a rivalry. It was war. He called his 15 to the Shelter, a broken-down roadhouse out in the desert, halfway between nothing and nowhere. It had been abandoned for years until he and his crew took it over, patched the roof, reinforced the walls, and made it theirs. The Shelter became a fortress, a place where the law dared not go, where deals were struck in whiskey and steel. That night, Shelter stood in the glow of a single neon sign and told his brothers what was coming. "They think we'll fold," he said, voice gravel thick. "They think we'll bow, but we ain't bowin'. We'll show them what it means to ride under the death head. 15 men are worth 1,500 when they're angels." And so it began. The 15, each of the 15 had a story. There was Big Ron, a giant with fists like anvils who'd once broken a man's jaw for insulting a waitress. Spider, the wiry mechanic who could rebuild a Harley blindfolded and drunk. Preacher, who carried a pocket Bible in one hand and a switchblade in the other, preaching sermons in blood and scripture. Then there was Gunny, an old Vietnam vet who still kept his dog tags tied to his cut, haunted but loyal. They weren't saints. Hell, they weren't even men you'd invite to dinner. But to Shelter, they were family, the only kind he ever trusted. When they swore loyalty, it wasn't to a charter or a code, it was to him. And he swore it back double. First blood. The Vultures struck first. A convoy of 3 Angel bikes was ambushed outside Barstow. 2 men died on the pavement, the third crawled back to the Shelter with bullets in his leg and fire in his eyes. Shelter stood over the dying men and swore vengeance. He carved their names into the wood of the Shelter's bar, Hawk and Jimmy 2 times. Martyrs now, their spirits bound to the Brotherhood. The retaliation was swift. Shelter and the 15 rolled out at midnight, engines howling like banshees across the desert. They found the Vultures' clubhouse, a shabby warehouse painted black with chicken wire windows, and they hit it hard. Chains, bats, Molotovs. They left it burning, Vultures scattering like the scavengers they were. But war isn't won in a single night. The King's burden. In the months that followed, the desert became a killing field. Deals turned into ambushes, runs into firefights. Shelter's beard grew long and gray, but his eyes never dimmed. He rode point always, never hiding behind his men. That was why they called him king, because he bore the crown of responsibility, heavy with blood. But kings carry burdens. Shelter's old lady, Maria, begged him to walk away. She'd been with him since the beginning, patched into his life like ink on skin. "You can't fight forever," she whispered one night in the Shelter, her hands trembling against his chest. "One day, they'll take you too." He kissed her forehead, but his answer never changed. "If they take me, they'll have to take the road with me." The 15 ride. The legend of the 15 spread. Bars whispered of 15 angels riding in a diamond formation, shelter at the point, engines so loud they drowned out fear itself. Rivals crossed highways just to avoid their path. Truckers swore they saw them in the dead of night, headlights off, like ghosts rolling silent through the desert. But legends attract hunters. One night, cartel mercenaries rolled into the shelter, AKs spraying. The battle was brutal, glass shattering, bikes exploding, blood on the pool table. Gunny took 3 bullets to the chest and died with a grin, whispering, "Better than, Nom." Preacher slit a man's throat while reciting the Lord's Prayer. When the smoke cleared, the angels stood, bloodied but unbroken. The shelter was in ruins, but the bond was stronger than ever. They buried Gunny out back, engines roaring in salute. Shelter spoke few words, but every man felt the weight. Brothers die, but the ride lives on. Betrayal. It wasn't the vultures or the cartel that nearly broke them. It was betrayal from within. Spider, the mechanic, had grown greedy. He'd cut his own deal with the cartel, promising roots and secrets in exchange for cash. Shelter found out too late. An ambush on the highway left 3 more angels dead, and Spider nowhere to be seen. When they finally caught him, hiding in a motel with a suitcase of dirty money, the 15 became 14. Shelter made no speech, no sermon. He simply looked Spider in the eye and said, "You chose the vultures. Now fly with them." The gunshot was quick, mercy for the brother he once loved. The others buried Spider in silence, no patch, no salute. The last ride. Years passed. The war bled both sides dry. The vultures collapsed under their own greed, and the cartel moved on to easier prey. The angels survived, scarred but undefeated. Shelter grew older, his beard silver, his hands stiff on the throttle. But he never stopped riding. One by one, the 15 fell. Prison, bullets, old age. By the turn of the millennium, only Shelter remained. He lived alone in the ruins of the shelter, his old lady long gone, his brothers buried beneath desert soil. Still, at night, townsfolk swore they heard 15 engines on the wind, rolling eternal across the blacktop. And then, one summer evening, a trucker saw him, King Old Lady Shelter, riding alone down the highway, the desert sun bleeding red behind him. No convoy, no brothers, just one man and one machine. But the trucker swore he heard 16 engines that night, Shelter's Harley, and 15 ghosts riding at his back. The legend. They say he died on the road, somewhere between Barstow and Needles, where the desert swallows bones and chrome alike. No body was ever found, no bike recovered. Only tire marks burned into the sand, stretching on forever. To this day, bikers tell the story of King Old Lady Shelter and the 15 Hells Angels. They raise their glasses in dusty bars and whisper his creed, "Brothers die, but the ride lives on." And when the desert wind howls, some swear it's the roar of engines, 15 strong, carrying their king across the eternal highway.